It's rare that we score episodes. That's not typically what we do here. We don't usually, say that it's an A or a B or give it an 8 or 9 or that's just sort of not our style. We just get on here, we discuss, how we felt about the episode, and that's basically what we do. But in this one case, I want to score this episode, and for me personally, it's a 10 out of 10. Uh, this is what anyone who shoots video or is trying to make any kind of entertainment, film, television. To me, this is the goal. This is what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to hit emotions. You're trying to tell a story, uh, and a character-driven one at that. And this checked every box as far as what I look for in entertainment. I thought it was a solid hour of entertainment. 10 out of 10, masterpiece. We're going to dig into why I feel that way. Guys, your gut reaction on this episode.
There was other episodes prior to this one that were my favorite for different reasons. This one, it's one of those things where, some of the other episodes had this adventure type element to it. This one felt like a movie. And by the end of it, I wanted to know more because a lot of the things that they've touched on in this show are real life events. The one where Diana got attacked, like that was a real thing that happened in Chicago. So I wanted to look more into this Tulsa massacre, which I looked into after a little bit after Watchmen, but I wanted to know more about it. And it made this episode, after reading more about it, made it all that more powerful and moving. And I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it was a really good episode. It was, again, like it's been touched on before in Watchmen, in HBO's Watchmen, but other than that, we've never heard anything about the Tulsa massacre, and it's insane that all this has happened in history, and we knew nothing about it, and other than that, like you said, this episode also had. I mean, if you want me to score it, also. Also, I love the episode, and I'm sure I know why you did, and why it was one of your favorites too. Not just touching on the history and showing you a part of history that you've never seen before, and it's weird that we just don't teach in schools. It's also Doctor Who and it's Back to the Future at the same time in a weird way.
Yes.
And I think that's part of what you like about it, because I know you're big into sci-fi. Well, we all are, and it combines two properties in a very clean way, and it's
real quick before I get into the intro. Yes, you're right. I'm a huge science fiction fan. I love time travel things. I love Doctor Who. I'm a fan of the Back to the Future trilogy, the Star Trek episodes that deal with time travel. Not only did this episode do it brilliantly, it also, like I said, had the character moments. You took a character like Montrose, who I've been very conflicted with since the beginning of this show, and I teared up. I'm not going to lie. It was some powerful shit that went on in this episode with that character. So now all of a sudden, I get him. I understand him. I'm under, it's the storytelling. It's what was achieved in this episode as far as developing the characters as well, and of course the history portion. It's fucked up that it takes HBO to teach us history.
It is.
You know what I mean? That it takes this entertainment and that it's not properly taught in textbooks in schools. But before we get into all those discussions, this is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer. And yes, we are talking about episode 9 of Lovecraft Country, titled Rewind 1921. If you've not subbed to the channel, please do so. We've grown quite a bit in the last couple months, and we definitely appreciate that. Hit that like button, hit the bell, leave a comment. We love interacting with the audience. A lot of content coming to the channel. We're currently doing Fargo season 4. Is it 4? I think it's 4.
I believe it's 4. Yeah.
We just did The Boys. We have all those reviews up. Raised by Wolves is already up. We're going to be doing Bly Manor, the first 2 episodes later this week. We'll be doing The Mandalorian when it starts. A lot of content on the channel. So yeah, anything. I just spoke a bunch. Y'all have any thoughts before we get further into this review?
No, I'm excited about creating shit with my friends. So
yeah, same here.
Good times.
Montrose. Let's talk about Montrose. You know, this is an episode where finally we've been complaining over and over, not only about can we please get more backstory on Montrose, but can these characters start talking? And they did. We finally got it in this episode. Finally, some talking, some sharing of information, to include Montrose telling Atticus the possibility that George is his real father. Big, powerful moment, you know, Atticus's reaction. And of course, later on, there was another scene that was even more powerful, I thought, that tied back to that scene. Uh, not just that moment, not George, excuse me, Montrose telling Letty, I know you're pregnant, telling her what he knows about Atticus, Ruby divulging a lot of her information. Everybody was sort of sharing in this episode. Finally, episode 9, it took to get to that point. How did y'all feel about all those revelations?
What, that it took the damn near the season finale for them to open their damn mouths and talk to each other?
Yeah, it is about time. Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things where, while I do understand Montrose and his traumas a lot more, you know, he's still a shitty guy. He's still a real shitty guy. Like, but you get it, and you get where the trauma comes from, and the whole scene where he's freaking out in his apartment. It's just he's been through so much, and you can understand why he's paranoid and on edge. But it still doesn't. Well, I was about to say it doesn't explain a lot of his actions, but I guess the trauma does explain a lot of his actions. You know, the extreme measures that he goes through because of what he's been through. It's it's not 100% unusual for him to do some of the things that he's done in a response. I mean, there's been no middle ground in his life. The whole thing's been crazy from what we've seen.
Well, and I think they, mentioned it a lot when he talked about getting, what the whole switch stuff. It was funny because Atticus had parroted some of those exact same phrases that happened to him. So when you talk about, Montrose was living the life he learned, it was 1000% that. To me, the worst part is that Atticus was getting, or not Atticus, Montrose was getting beat the way he was because his dad knew he was gay or assumed he was. So he wasn't getting, his dad was a giant piece of shit. So he was beating him for those kind of reasons. Now, Montrose beating Atticus, he wasn't, lashing out at him for the same reasons, but he was lashing out at him for the same reasons. Like, he wasn't doing it because he thought Atticus was going down that path. He did it because he was trying to make up for himself, for his own.
Yeah, exactly. He kind of, he was trying to toughen up his son, and he barely knew a way to, like you said, it's history repeating itself. He learned everything he knows about being a father from his father, and that was his idea of it. And from what we saw of that scene, he likely got it worse than anything he's done to Atticus. So because it looked like his father, if he wasn't stopped, was going to beat him to death and was going to beat anyone who tried to stop him until Atticus's mother stepped out and another parent had to reprimand him.
And it was done in the open. He had no concerns about people seeing what it was he was doing. Imagine what he was doing behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah, so I do.
I was just going to say Montrose said that. Montrose said, for her to say that, that George wasn't helping me, he helped me more than anybody will ever know, which means it was happening behind closed doors all the time.
Yeah, so some of his crazy behavior, just it makes a lot more sense now given what he's gone through. The fact that he was beaten like this regular, that he experienced the Tulsa massacre for one, and survived that and moved to Chicago and still had to hide who he was, and then he married Atticus's mom, and then found out that magic was real of all things, and that and that most of the only people that know it are people that definitely don't have his best interest at heart. So the odds are stacked even more against him. And then he winds up, chained up under a guard tower and imprisoned for, what was it, weeks, while Atticus and everyone was trying to figure out where he was and what happened.
And it's even, I mean, that's a good summary of his life, but even deeper, you're right, he was beaten and arguably tortured because of who he was. And then that led to the moment, very powerful moment, where he confronts Thomas, character we didn't know about, who was his first, I guess, romantic interest. And he tells him off. He tells him, calls him names and basically says, I'm not what you are. And then the guys show up and kill Thomas in front of him. And when you start stacking up the trauma and all the horrible shit that he did, that he felt he had to do, which, there's that line where he tells Atticus, all the sacrifice he's made to have a son,
Yeah, when he says that was the first of many that he's made.
And so, there's also the line where, he's telling Atticus, you think you've seen war, wait until tonight. We also forget, I mean, Letty, the shit she went through, their whole family was brutally murdered, in a very horrible way. So yes, Montrose has been through some shit in his life, and it has definitely shaped him into, the man he is. And as you said earlier, Larry, we've dealt with this in quite a few of the shows we've reviewed. There are characters that are bad people, but it is interesting when a show takes the time to dig into those characters and to explain who they are, and they're done. I hate, everyone hates this, I think, at this point, just sort of a bad guy that's just bad, or a character that's just bad. We need layers. And one of my big issues last week was Montrose flipping out on D. I brought that up. I didn't like the way he snapped, but he caught himself. So I do feel deep down Montrose wants to better himself a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and if anything, like that likely, may not have been him reacting the way that he reacted with Atticus in the past. If anything, he's probably, given all the shit he's gone through, he probably has a severe anxiety disorder, if anything, on top of survivor's guilt and God knows how many mental issues.
Well, yeah, and you look at the time frame, mental health even now is still frowned upon. It's just now starting to get the recognition that it deserves, as far as, anxiety, depression, like these things that before people are like, suck it up. I can't imagine the 50s being someone who probably, PTSD, severe PTSD with some of the shit that he was put through, on top of, like you said, anxiety, depression, being a minority and being homosexual, on top of, like, he had, not just, the deck stacked against him. He had like all of the Las Vegas decks stacked against him and created who he was. And I can't imagine having to live through that. Now, to me, it still makes it explains him. Does that justify what he did? No, but it certainly does explain the kind of person he is and what molded him into what he is.
Well, yeah, and it's the sort of thing, like, and it's got to hit extra hard because every major event that we just named simply happened because he was who he was. Yes. He was targeted in the Tulsa massacre because he was a black man. He was beaten by his father because he was a gay man. He was captured and imprisoned and kept in chains under that tower because he was Atticus's mom's husband, because he was Atticus's father. Everything that everything that he was, like, for simply being himself, every trauma that we've mentioned has been inflicted on him.
Yes. And yeah, I'm sure the audience is aware when we're talking about the bad things he's done. Not only are we talking about Atticus's being, beaten as a child, we're talking about the murder he committed several episodes back, which the show sort of glossed over at this point.
Yeah, it's still one of those things where it feels like real unforgivable, and that's what I mean by he's still a shitty person to some degree. But you understand it with all these disorders and all the mental health issues he's got to have by this point. Why he could so coldly do that the thing he did, given what he's gone through.
Hippolyta returns, and as you texted me, Larry, she is the Doctor now from Doctor Who. She's speaking like the Doctor, super intelligent. I chuckled the line where she's the motherboard.
Yeah, where she's the motherboard, and she's talking
line.
about all her, like thousands of years of it,
yes,
or hundreds of years of experience and everything, and knowledge and shit. And I'm like, oh, she's Doctor Who now.
And she, fixes the machine. At this point, D, has been cursed. They get Christina to come in and help, and basically, it's a restoration spell, but it's a temporary fix. They need that book of names, and the only place it existed that they know of was it was in Tulsa, and it was destroyed in the massacre. So Hippolyta comes back and is like, I'm going to fix that machine, and I'm going to let you guys go back and do some quantum leap action, and get that book. And so yeah, her hair turns blue at the end, which I enjoyed. I hope they make a second season, because I could see a character like her.
Yeah,
a lot of cool things. So I will be very angry, HBO, if this does not get a second season. Now, I think the good news is possibly they were marketing next week's episode as the season finale, not series finale. So I'm hoping that's a hint. But Hippolyta, what did y'all think about, her return?
I not only enjoyed it, I thought, like you said, going forward, as far as if they were to do another season, even if they wrapped up this storyline, she could be like, you know what, this isn't how things were supposed to end. This happened. Now the future is going to be different. So, what I'm saying? Like, she may have saw glimpses of multiple realities and how things could end. And when things go wrong, or just like, them going back in time this time to get the book, they may have disrupted something. Or, Letty walking through the streets trying to get blown up. She could have been seen by other people. And now there's this ghost story of this, woman walking through the streets, which created, a superhero. They could almost tie in the Watchmen universe to this. Holy shit. Like, all the things that happened there. I think that her character leaves the door open for so many more adventures and storylines, and Doctor Who type adventure of the week.
That's true. The Watchmen universe could be one of those alternate universes. That is true.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's one of those things where I hope they do explore it more, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and she's now a character that stands out a lot, because there's not a lot of women with purple hair in that era, for one, and she's got the things in her wrist, and I wonder if she can hide those, or if those are always exposed. It's like, will they keep the time machine? Will the time machine be a fixture in the show? Because if so, that's a big deal. If we're going to have a lot of time hijinks, and like Spencer said, I'm very curious about what other things happen because of this adventure, because they made it very clear that some of the things that we know and some of the knowledge we've gotten in the past, since early episodes, were because this already happened. They already traveled through time. It's been established, and it did change their primary timeline. Because the whole thing with the baseball bat, the fact that it was Atticus the whole time, clearly their timeline is we were already in the altered timeline. So what else may have been affected?
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, clearly there are things that maybe were set up that we don't know about already that'll play out in the next episode, as far as manipulating the timeline. I completely agree. Letty, as powerful as Montrose and Atticus' scenes were this week, Letty was put in such a horrible position. Not only did she have to retrieve the book, but she had to do it in a way in which she had to allow Atticus' family to die. and she had to be present for it. And I appreciate that the showrunner wanted to show the gruesomeness of the deaths, and the burning alive and all that. I know that I'm that was on purpose. They wanted you to feel it. They wanted you to say, yeah, this shit happened. And very emotional sequence. um how did y'all feel about how Letty's storyline played out?
Well, I just want to say that the minute they sent her to the house, they said, Letty, you stay here and you do this. I think we all knew that was going to happen. Then it's like, oh right, she's immortal, so they're
Yeah,
going to
she
show us
can't be
how.
hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to show us how gruesome this was, and yeah, like you said, it's a good thing to do, not to show that, and not to try and gloss over, the events that actually happened. Because you can't just play it like any other point in history. You can't open this can of worms and say this happened, this is a real event, and and show us these things that haven't really been taught to us in history class, and then just and then not show us how bad it was. So I think that was the best choice.
Oh, I thought it was very it, humanizing when they showed her praying with the lady who has never opened the book. So when they talk about the book itself, they talk about magic being a real thing. The people who are holding this book knew that they were supposed to hold it, but they didn't know why. So this lady's praying with her, and she is just watching this lady burn alive. And that to me was very moving to just show that she just said, hey, we can't change the timeline, we can't change it, we can't change what happens, this already happened. And the older lady was just like, okay, well, just pray with me then. I was like, damn, for her to make peace with knowing that she was going to be burned alive was that takes
Well,
some balls.
yeah, and it was and after being
Damn.
everything explained to her, it was a sacrifice for future generations. She was trying to, you know, protect the future of her family, and and because she knew that she was going to die there, so she just kind of, yeah, like you said, it took balls to just accept that for what it was, and to for some level of hope for the future sacrifice herself. And it's also maybe a scene that kind of ripples throughout the season, and in some ways creates the same sort of trauma that's in Montrose, in Letty herself, for one, because because she, not only because she experienced that, but because now they have the knowledge that because they did already affect time, that she could have stopped it because this has already happened.
Yeah, I can't imagine Letty not being affected, from here on out because of that very scene. And as far as the time travel, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Doctor Who, a show that's all about that. They occasionally have those episodes where a horrible thing has to happen and he has to let it happen. But obviously, they can't go as far as what Lovecraft Country can do and what
Right.
what they did. And this is that kind of, going back to my things I loved about this show. I constantly gripe about remakes and reboots and stuff like that. And so to take basically Back to the Future, and give it a fresh take and do it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I love Back to the Future and it's fun and it's entertaining and everything. But to take that sort of concept and put some real shit in it, and that makes you feel, and that was one thing I just loved about this episode. I was sitting back like, holy shit, if I was ever gonna, remake something like that, I would hope that I would be clever enough to do it in a way that makes it feel fresh and impactful. And that was another reason that I really enjoyed the episode.
Yeah, because like you said, it's got a lot of those concepts, but it has a completely different feel to it. It's very tense in a way that, like you said, Doctor Who or Back to the Future just never is, because they can't go to the places that the show goes, and they can't touch on these topics.
Well,
So,
I don't think it's not that they can't. It Back to the Future wouldn't be the movie it was if it touched on these kind of topics like that. I don't.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
true.
that I think that this show is dark. They've touched on so many things that I I knew existed, but I didn't know the backstory of why it existed. The whole part with the Emmett Till stuff. I knew that that was a thing, but I didn't ever think to look more into it. But this show has made me learn more of why things happened than any show that I've seen in any recent time or any movie. And this is a fictional thing with fucking vampire dog things and, a Cthulhu monster and time travel. And this show has made me look more into, some past events than, you know, real life shows or documentaries have. And it's crazy to learn from this kind of show. And it's so well written, so moving, and touching on this real life stuff as well as touching on time travel and monsters at the same time. It's crazy that they're able to do both things and balance it so well.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just a shame that we never get that from anything more grounded. Even your more grounded shows don't touch this on these portions of history. Uh, and like you said, yeah, good point. A Back to the Future couldn't do this, but Doctor Who certainly could. Doctor Who could do this, I think. Because they touch on so much, because it's not just one contained movie that's supposed to be solely fun. It's a period of history that they could touch on. Then again, we knew so little about this in America. Given that they're in England in Doctor Who, I doubt they knew about it at all.
The sheriff. We get a few answers about the sheriff. I'm assuming he died in that scene. That's what it appeared to me. So basically, he's just been swapping out parts. He's a Frankenstein type creation. That's what I gathered from it. Did you get something different from that, or yeah?
Yes. No, not really. The thing that I learned through IMDb, they are called the Sons of Lazarus. Did you guys ever catch that or hear them say that?
I didn't know that.
No.
Huh.
That's a big. They call one of the people that I was looking at different characters, and I was trying to see if the mom's dad, he looked, because I only saw the side of his face. I thought it was the dude from Hamilton that played Aaron Burr for a second. So I looked to see that, and then I'm scrolling through names, and it said Sons of Lazarus, and I was like, wait, what? And it made sense because they kept putting him back together so that this guy could live forever. So it was their version of the immortality spell by basically just Frankensteining him back together over and over and over. But the curse of the immortality, she just basically reversed it and was like, well, basically it was his undoing.
It fits with, going back to that, I believe, episode 3, that particular doctor, the mad scientist. It was straight Lovecraft. It was Reanimator. I mean, anybody who's familiar with Reanimator, that's essentially what story they were sort of using for all this. So, and if you go watch the second Reanimator film, which is not it's an offshoot, but he does that. He'll piece different body parts together and stuff. But yeah, Larry did.
Well, no, I think we pretty much covered it. That it was a full explanation of what was going on in that episode, which we were debating for a while. But at this point, it's pretty cut and dry. It's like you said, it's like Reanimator, what he was doing, and the Sons of Lazarus, huh? Well, I guess that each one of these, we now know that each one of these particular lodges has a different name and motif, I'm guessing, which, given what there's 37 of them, that means that
I don't remember. There's several, yeah.
I mean, that means to me that there's a lot of staying power for this show.
Yes, that is true. Christina, she made her intentions crystal clear. Shockingly so. She even told everyone, "Yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm want to be immortal, and I need Atticus's blood to accomplish that. And yes, he will die. That she's. I mean, she was open. Ruby seems completely cool with it. Ruby doesn't give a shit about Atticus. She cares about her sister. She cares about Letty, and she seems to be on board with
Mm,
Christina.
I here's my
Let me go one more thing, and then you can try. When she the woman she's asking, who's this woman, blah blah blah, and she tells her, and then she, I guess, proceeds to, she doesn't want to use her anymore. She's like, I prefer to be a redhead. My assumption is she's going to go out, find a woman and kill her and take her to be that redhead. um uh, Tell me if you disagree. If that is the case, well, now she's committing murder. She's part of the crew. She's into this.
I agree
Well,
with that part. I just don't necessarily think that Atticus has to die just
Oh, I'm
because
not saying.
she's
I'm just saying. I think Ruby. That's not my argument. I'm saying I think Ruby is on board with whatever Christina wants to do, as long as
yes.
Letty is not in danger.
Yes. I don't disagree with that. I was thinking that, through this whole immortality spell and for her to be okay with everything, I don't think that she even intends to kill Atticus. When she says, I need all of his blood, I don't know that, it's an immortality spell. Who's to say that this isn't also immortality for Atticus?
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I think that it's going to work both
Uh,
ways to where she's given this immortality spell to not only herself, but to Atticus as well.
so elaborate on that. Yeah, let's talk about, yeah, what's the next episode going to be? So is that, you think? Do you think Christina's aware of this, or?
I do. And I think that she's going to help get them on board by doing so. I think that, I don't, her, I don't think that and clearly she's not even trying to trick them at this point. She's just like, no, this is what I need. This is so, and if it's willing, because she needs him to willingly do it, because that was part of the, mantra too. Because I'm trying to remember which character said it, was talking about they need a willing participant. I
Hmm.
don't remember which one said it, but it's, they can't hold him down into it, which is what she, I think, realized where her dad kept fucking up. By holding them hostage and doing these things, it's not helping them complete the ritual the way it's supposed to be completed. So if he's a willing participant, why the fuck would Atticus at this point willingly die, willingly sacrifice himself to to what? To what end? It's not helping anybody. She's, saving these people, but she's only doing it temporarily. So what? She's going to get her own immortality, but not help any of them? Like, at what point would it help Atticus's cause if he doesn't live also? And I think that he, at the end of this, is also going to be immortal.
Well, yeah, and I think it's the sort of thing where, well, yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of agree and disagree with Spencer to some extent because I do believe
Is
he's right.
Ruby a villain? That's a question I want.
Is Ruby a villain? Okay, well, I'll answer that first then. Ruby? No, I don't think so. I think Ruby is potentially playing her. That's what I think, uh, to some degree, because she's been lied to by everybody throughout the series, or and even an omission of the truth is a lie, and she got a lot of new truths this episode. That okay, so this person was someone that my sister put in a coma, and you've been partially using me in order to get to them and everything, and she admitted that, and it seems, and was very open about it, and yeah, she's telling the truth now, and she didn't lie to her previously, but like I said, just not saying anything when you know the truth is also in itself dishonest. So I think Ruby is perhaps even playing her own game to some degree, that she does have a problem with this potentially. I don't think she's gone like evil or anything. Like she might have someone else in mind, or maybe even the redhead thing was just her her trying to seem more at ease with her plan, just stating things that way. You know, uh, But as far as whether Atticus will die for the ritual or anything, I don't think that that'll happen. Also, I'm with Spencer on that one. I think that he'll act as sort of to use, I guess, D&D and Harry Potter terms and whatnot. Atticus will act as sort of a phylactery. That her immortality will potentially be tied to him. So it'll be the sort of thing where he can't die as long as she's alive, and vice versa. They'll kind of be tied to each other.
That'd be interesting. So you think Christina survives?
I don't think she knows that that'll happen. That's another place where I disagree. I don't think she's completely aware. Just because it seems to be just because you understand the purpose of the spell, and even though she's worked it out better than her father has, you don't necessarily understand how it's going to turn out. Like Montrose cast a protection spell on Atticus and his grandson. And intent's a big part of that, but he had no idea what the outcome would be.
I think everything else said is valid. I have no idea how this thing is going to end. We saw the trailer, and clearly the spell is being attempted, and obviously what happens right after that, we have no idea. We're dealing with a show that involves not only magic, but time travel, multiverses, and who knows what else. Will there be an X factor? Will there be a wild card? Will something come in, character or whatever, that hasn't really been a major player and change the dynamic of the final episode? Do you think there's more to it than just Atticus versus Christina?
Yes.
X-Pac.
It's I had a feeling it was going to go there. But here's the thing, Atticus agreed to these terms. Atticus agreed to this sacrifice, and he may be bound to that for some reason, but but the group didn't agree to give him up. He agreed to those terms. So I think it'll be, this group, this family that will save him, and he'll agree to go to Artem. He'll go there. He'll do the sacrifice, or he'll attempt it, but they're going to try to stop it because, while he agreed, they didn't agree to give him up.
Well, and I don't know what's in that book of names yet. So there may be a counterspell or something that backfires to where he lives, but Christina doesn't, and he becomes immortal. I don't know what necessarily is in that book. And they may discover that in that book of names that Christina might be able to get what she wants, and at the same time, so might they. I don't know necessarily what's in this book just yet, but I think hopefully we'll find out, and hopefully there'll be even more mysteries unravel in a further season.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing. I think that plays into it too, because, when Letty gets the book, she says before that she was told to hold on to it, but never to open it, and yet she has the phrase to open it. She was told that for a reason, and I feel like that heavily involves the time travel aspect of this show. That there may be more related to that. There may be something significant in this book that will save Atticus. Hell, given that there is time travel in the show now, and that is a big factor, they could have gone back and written a spell in that book and handed it off to her at some point and told her never to open it, and yet give her a phrase. This could be a sort of cyclical situation where, they've saved themselves technically by interfering in time. I mean, honestly, it could have been Hippolyta. She could have already done it.
Is Huey Lewis in the news? Back in time.
There. Damn it, Spencer. My next thought was like a serious one. And I think you throw in the comedy. So I was gonna not close, but sort of my last point, and then if you guys wanted to talk about anything else, I talked about earlier, the powerful moments in the episode that choked me up, and I got a little teary eyed, and I think the one that really stuck was the way it was shot, it was everything about it, the music and everything. When Montrose is standing there looking out the window and watching the city burn, and he starts reciting the names of those who died or dying. For him, it was the past, and yet it's the present at the same time. Nerding out, but like I said, I love science fiction and stuff like that. And so for them to tell that story in that way, to me, was brilliant and very emotional. Just any thoughts on that scene or any other scene that you felt was very, sort of the scene that you were like, damn, that was some
Well,
deep shit.
that was a very powerful, hard hitting moment for me, especially when it seemed, because here's where I speculated they were going to go, and I was like, oh, this is going to be dark, because it seemed like a situation. He's naming these people, and he's going through their day to day lives and everything, and that this was Doctor So and So, and he had a practice here, and this was our local barber, so and so, and naming them all and their professions and their day to day lives, and he's crying at the same time, and the portals close, and it's seeming to me like this may be sort of this is the one of the moments that shaped him in a rough way and caused a lot of his traumas, and it's something very, very traumatic that he escaped, but it seemed like he may die in that town, or he may have to relive all the things that he's relived before if that portal was permanently closed, because I thought it was going to be, for one.
That would
And
have been, yeah.
well, because we have two factors here. We have the fact that Letty can't die, and and Montrose is familiar with has escaped this before, and we may have gotten an episode where he's helping her escape it, and he and Letty and his grandson have to live through it, and and I thought they were literally just going to go forward in time at roughly the same pace that we all do, just by living it. So that was very dark, and just like you said, him listing off all the lives that were lost there. Well, not all of them, but the ones that were significant to him personally. That was a very hard hitting moment.
I did enjoy that. Well, I didn't enjoy it. Like
Well, yeah, we get what you mean.
I enjoyed
appreciate the art of
like the way it was done. But to me, that wasn't the hardest scene to watch, as far as emotional scenes, is the scene where Atticus had to hold Montrose back from trying to basically save Montrose, and then realizing that he had to save his own dad. Uh, that scene to me was the most moving scene, and the most touching scene, to basically realize in that moment that he himself saved himself. It was kind of like this weird loop that happened, because without Atticus himself wouldn't have existed. So it was really like time. That
Michael K. Williams, man.
Yeah.
That dude acted his ass off in this episode. And if I was going to submit an episode for, awards consideration, this would be in that list.
Yes. Including him. And Atticus. It's
Yeah.
Letty, to me, her didn't have a lot of lines, but sometimes when you see somebody there, she didn't have to say anything. Like when she's walking up the street with everything, the effects team did an amazing job. This episode in whole, it was just so well done. Like I said, it was just like a short movie. They could have expanded it to an hour and a half, and I still would have watched the entire thing and been, it would have just been a movie. They could have tied up parts of next week into this, and basically this one episode could have been a standalone movie all by itself.
There's some people. I hate to joke about this, but it's such a serious episode. But on Twitter, I was on Twitter right before we started recording, and just seeing what the consensus was with the episode, and a lot of people are pointing out it's a very powerful moment, but Letty was going a little slow.
Yeah, it's
like,
that was my thought too. I was like, "What the fuck are you walking? Why are you walking right now?"
Hippolyta is struggling like all hell to keep that fucking portal open, and Letty walking slow as hell. And so there's already a bunch of people joking about that.
That was a moment where I was like, "Letty, what the hell? What are you doing?"
Yeah, I was laughing at quite a few memes. But
yeah, because she might be invulnerable, but holy shit, does she know that Hippolyta is? Because she might not be.
Well, yeah, that, and I was like, and I'm like, are you 100% sure that this book is going to hold up to all this damage? You're getting, yeah, just.
Once the plane that you need, gotta have been running at that point.
Yeah, exactly. She had a bomb dropped on her and everything. It's crazy that she was walking during that scene.
There's a few jokes being cracked. But
well, I also have to say about Letty. One more thing about Letty. We also got to get some scenes in future episodes, and I imagine this will have to be season 2 because we only got one left, where we get some reasons why Letty and Atticus are a thing in the first place, because they spend more time at each other's throats than any other character. Like we don't really see much of them actually, having a relationship. We see a lot of them pushing each other away, yelling at each other, going behind each other's backs and doing stuff, and that seems to be the bulk of their relationship. Which is why we're more for I can't remember the character's name right now.
Gia.
Gia, yeah. This is why the thing with Gia seems so much more real, because we get to see him actually have a relationship with Gia. It still doesn't seem real. Like when they were arguing early on in this episode, it didn't get as heated as it did in previous episodes, but there was a point where I was like, where I thought to myself, man, do you two even like each other? Like in the slightest?
They are written in a way, where they definitely they bump heads more than anything. Yeah, they don't see eye to eye on shit like ever. I'll agree. I think it's odd to say this. I think that was one of the strengths of this episode was the fact they were not in it together as much. They were. I think the fact that they were separated doing their own thing was sort of a strength to the episode.
So do I.
Yeah, and that's sad. Yeah, that the best moments with the two are when they're not together. Honestly, because they're supposed to be a couple, but our best scenes with Letty or Atticus are when we don't have Letty with Atticus, because that's when they're lying to each other. That's when they're yelling at each other, not really accomplishing each other, and that's where we have a lot of two characters once again hiding obvious truths from each other that could help with what they're both trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean the fact that she's still trying to keep the child a secret. It's like, why?
Yeah, there's no point to it.
Yeah. We've talked about a lot. I've gone through all of my notes. So is there anything else y'all want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I just, not in great detail. I just really, you talk about award-winning episodes. If this doesn't, I would like to see what beats it, because that whatever beats this has gotta, holy shit, it would be my new favorite thing, because this is already, whatever beats this has to, enthrall me just as much as this did, because I really did enjoy this. I, was really impressed with every aspect of this episode.
Well, a lot of awards aren't actually based on how good a thing is. Like there's a lot of things that deserve awards that don't get them.
Yes, I'm aware.
But that's a whole nother topic. But my thought would be, well, one final note on a character that we really didn't touch on, Montrose's father. We talked about how this humanized Montrose. We heard a lot of bad crap about Montrose's father throughout the series, and this episode more than confirmed it. But again, we also, even though the man seems pretty irredeemable, he really does. We did also get a human side to him, where when everything started, he pulled Letty off the street, and he was trying to make sure that she was okay and everything, and he was genuinely trying to help. It was like you said, even though he's got villainous characteristics, we don't have a mustache twirling round bomb throwing villain here. We get a person, and I'm just glad they did it that way. Because even though you, like you said, you want a villain, you don't want Wyndham Earl from season 2 of Twin Peaks. You don't want this unbelievably. I would say that. Well, I mean, it is to me now to some degree.
Yes,
to some degree, only because I know that. Yeah, it's like that type of person exists. But it's like that was compared to season 1's villain, not as good, because you gotta see people as. I mean, you gotta present people as people.
Because they could have easily had him, like you said, not help Letty. F you, you're on your own. They could have went that route, but they didn't. You're right.
Yeah, they could have had Atticus's mom or something, and Montrose's dad shut the door on her face, and just kind of go, get the hell off my land, and try to push and try to save his own skin instead of everybody else in his house. But instead, they showed that he is sympathetic to people. He's just got real evil traits, and he's got a lot of natural ingrained day-to-day bad characteristics that you see, even though they're really bad. I mean, it's you're showing your villain as a human in a way, and that is important for the believability. Yeah, there's layers, and that's important for the believability of the character and the show itself.
Onions have layers.
and so should your characters if you're gonna give them this much screen time.
Anything, Spencer?
No, I.
All right. As normal, we appreciate the audience. We've enjoyed Lovecraft Country. We're one left. We just wrapped up The Boys, earlier today. It's sad to see that one go, but it's going to be really sad to see this show go. Hopefully we get an announcement really soon about a second season. So far, as of this recording, I have not seen anything about a second season. Like I said, they did say end of season finale, not series finale. Hopefully that's a hint at potentially more seasons. If you haven't subbed, please do so. Hit the like, leave a comment. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.